Hey, dumpster fire friends. We are here today to talk about a misconception. Leaders do not care about frontline. It's only the numbers.
Oh,
I know. Let's talk about a belief that's quietly damaging teams. Nursing leaders only care about those numbers. We get why it feels that way, but when staffing is tight, productivity is tracked, and budgets are front and center, and we are constantly asking more, it can seem like people come second. But here's the truth: most leaders don't stop caring. They just get pulled into a system where numbers represent the people. So the real problem is that we're not always showing how the two connect as leaders. And when connection is missing, trust starts to break.
interesting thought.
So why is this misconception so damaging? It isn't even completely true,
Yeah,
but
it's true.
perception really matters,
Mm.
even if the intent is different. That means that if staff are perceiving this, as the leader, you need to address these concerns and clarify what is happening.
Okay, so we need to acknowledge the reality. But the key here is that we're trying to validate, not dismiss. So if you're just like, yes, I am doing other things and I do care, that isn't probably going to mean much to your staff. They're going to be like, you seem defensive and mad, and I don't know why you're being like that. So I didn't even do anything. But it's true. Sometimes you have to really disclose what's going on. So when Teresa and I became new nurse managers, like I said, we were forced in the dumpster fire, and we had a lot of crazy stuff going on. I think we had half of the nurses we needed. We lost a ton of experience in the world. A couple nurses who had 20 plus experiences out, or 20 plus years of experience, that were like, you know what, I'm going to retire. This seems like a good time for me to exit stage left. And we were in a situation where the community was full of patients who were really sick, and we couldn't close our beds in the ICU. So was like, how are we going to deal with that? And it could have felt like I was in there being a marching band instructor telling the staff, you got to come to work. We're going to demand overtime. I'm canceling all leave. I could have done that, but I didn't. I just told them what was going on. And I was like, guys, this really sucks. I have to make decisions that are hard. And I'm in a really bad spot. We can't close the beds. Here's why. This is what's going on in the community. Yes, this is coming from our upper level leadership, but it's for a reason. And so trying to just communicate that this is going on. So if you've ever felt like you're a number, you're not alone, but we're here to help nurse leaders figure out how to communicate that better to their teams.
And just for a few examples, sepsis bundles give us data that mean patients are not doing well. And if you are missing the mark and not doing the charting, what is that? That could look like a patient's not doing well, but really in reality, you did it.
Mm-hmm.
We have the pressure on all of us to discharge, admit, move patients quickly. Like I know Cindy recently watched this thing, went to a conference, and this huge one was boarding patients in the ED has real consequences. So not moving patients has consequences for those patients. If they're not in the right environment, it can actually cause problems. So we're not trying to pressure you to move your patients because we're trying to make your life hard. We're doing it because it does eventually lead to the patient having bad outcomes. Not having ICU beds could harm the patients. ER moves quickly through triage times, the metric, double-edged sword, because failure to triage correctly has negative outcomes. However, failure to triage quickly also has negative outcomes. So, Cindy, what did you have about that?
Oh, yeah. So my son, who is a teenager, worked at Taco Bell. And he was telling me that even in his life, in his little world of fast food, that this is also something happening with him. And luckily, my kid, he listens to me talk about leadership all the time. He has probably a better understanding of these dynamics. And so he was recognizing this. But he said, our store has this metric that they want to be the fastest Taco Bell in the city. And so they really, really push time on throughput and the order to the window to get the order out. But he noticed that when they pushed the time too fast, that they got the orders wrong, and then the customer service dropped, and their appreciation dropped. And he was like, we can't just do one thing. We've also got to pay attention to the customer service, and we need to slow down enough that we're actually making sure we're getting the orders right. So guys, this isn't just in healthcare. This is just an industry in life when you have commerce going on. So, yeah.
So reframing that misconception. and understanding. Obviously, leaders are responsible for the budget and the staffing grids and the productivity and blah, blah, blah. But numbers are not the goal. They're the language we use in the system, and they actually equate to patient lives. And the numbers and the data is how we advocate for staff and justify the reasoning we choose things. So you can actually utilize the numbers, the data, and the tools as a thing to advocate for your staff. So making sure that you're communicating how you're doing that to your frontline staff or your team, if it's a bigger scale, helps them create and understand what that misconception really looks like. Leaders don't care more about the numbers. They're just held accountable to them.
And it's really helpful, I think, if you can tell your team how this impacts them. I think nothing speaks more volumes than how it's going to affect them personally. So, for example, a couple of years ago, we had a bunch of failures we had in our documentation. It was a really stupid documentation thing. It was like we were supposed to document vital signs in the note and in another place. And the nursing staff, they're like, that's redundant, that's double work, we don't want to do it. Well, unfortunately, we worked in a system that is a little archaic, and it doesn't know how to translate that information back and forth. And I was trying to get the team to buy in because it was affecting some bigger metrics that were happening. And the team was like, well, why should I have to do that? Why should I have to double chart on something when somebody can just go look in the note? And so I kind of had to back it up for them. And I was like, guys, this metric in this particular place is where they can pull this data to show, in this particular case, it was 30-day mortality. So these vital signs that we were checking that we had to put in another place would the only way that the system could pull it was from the secondary place that we put the vital signs. And so I had to explain to them, this is affecting our 30-day mortality. If our 30-day mortality looks worse than it is, then that means patients are going to be afraid to come to us because all of our information is public. And so if patients are like, oh, this hospital has a really high mortality rate, they're not going to want to come there. If patients don't come to the hospital, we don't get revenue and we don't get reimbursement. And if we don't get reimbursement and revenue, we don't have the funds to pay for nursing staff. So I was like, guys, this seems dumb, but at the end of the day, this is how I can advocate for more resources for our team. If you want me to give you better staffing, if you want me to be able to give you better resources and leave and whatever the widget is that they want, I can't do that if we aren't playing our part of the game. And that's really meaningful to bring that back to them. So 3 ways that leaders can miss the mark is the mistake, is the lack of transparency. So not explaining that why behind the doors, what I just talked about. If you're not doing that piece and you're just like, just do it because I told you you have to do it and it's important because I said so, that does not work. Poor communication is another mistake. Talking about the numbers, but not about the impact. When you're just like, I remember one of my first jobs when we had the Press Ganey reports, my manager used to send out the list of all of our ratings every week. Every week it was just a blast of here's your grade. And it was like, guys, don't forget to tell your patients that you're walking next to them for their safety and you're closing the door for their privacy. And they were giving us these rote, sayings. I was like, am I a telemarketer now? I don't understand. And all that did was make me feel bad and make me feel like you don't care about my expertise. You don't care about my training. That doesn't work. You got to talk about the impact and how that comes back around to the patient care and the patient and your staff experience. And then the last thing that leaders tend to miss the mark on is just being disconnected. Weird. So
Like we said that.
Yeah. So if you're stuck in your office and you haven't walked out to say, what's going on out here? Is the house on fire? I don't know. I've been in my little bubble. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. You need to pay attention. So tips to show up as the leader you want to be and help communicate and shift this misconception is translating the numbers into meaning. Here's why it matters, just like the story Cindy shared. Advocating with the data. Using the metrics to push for the resource. Again, just the same story that she was saying. Instead of assuming your staff is failing, share the data in a meaningful way and ask for solutions and ideas for improvement. So you can say, this is the problem. Here's what our data says. Can you guys tell me what is happening in your experience so we can make the change to meet the mark, right? And again, that requires connection. That requires you going out there and being around and seeing what's happening. Staying human, rounding, listening, acknowledging that you know the workload is high, not trying to add extra things without considering you're working towards resources. It's saying, I need this from you guys again so that I can work towards this goal that we're asking for. And then a couple of practical takeaways to make these actionable are for leaders, obviously, explain the decisions and close the loop. Okay.
Don't forget that part.
Yeah.
You got to circle back.
Yeah. Don't just focus on one side of it. And then sometimes you really do have to do this. Remind the staff what you have done for them so that when you are asking for another step or another thing, that they're not just focused on, oh, you're asking me to do more with less. Try to focus on, this is where we started, this is where we are, and now we need to make this adjustment. So just continue to circle back. And then for staff, obviously ask questions about the why and get them engaged and shared accountability to the metrics and to the numbers that they have onus over this situation. In closing, we want to talk about bringing it back to connection.
Yes.
Surprise!
If you guys are having trouble with that, we have several videos that we've posted about this. We've got how to not be a nurse babysitter. We've got, are you being a manager or a leader? So if you're struggling with how to make connection with your staff, go check out those videos. They're going to really help you figure out how to make that connection, build that trust, which again, I'm going to say it again. When your trust is high, you are more efficient. You get more done faster. When your trust is low, you're going to spend all your time putting out fires and you're never going to get on top of that task list of oriented. You're going to be on a hamster wheel and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And you're going to burn out and you're not going to want to stay in this job. And it's not because it's the job. It's because how you are leading. So make sure that you check those videos out if you haven't watched them.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, healthcare truly does run. Every business runs on both people and numbers. So we want to stop seeing them as opposites, right? The numbers are there to help guide us. They aren't the answer to everything. And sometimes your data might be off for some reason. Figure that out.
But they do help tell the story. So learn how to use those numbers in a way that you can lean into and leverage. So sometimes it's like, sometimes when we're really like obsessed with CLABSIs or CAUTIs and we're out there and we're going, get your CHG bath done and do your Foley care. Well, if we don't explain why that is important and we don't even tell the staff, hey, we've had a spike in our infection rates and we think that it has come back to this and here's why, that means something to them. They don't want to be the unit that has all the infections. That looks bad on them too. So giving that as part of the story is going to help them be more effective as themselves so they can show up and be their best selves as frontline staff.
Yeah. So basically, at the end of the day, you don't have time to explain every single choice you make for every single thing. That would be exhausting and you'd never get anything done. But if you take time to do this a few times and help them learn the background of what you're doing, basically what they're going to do is learn to trust you and know that when you are pushing them for something, they will recognize that as you're trying to advocate for them.
Yeah, if you've done that back work on building the trust, then when you do have to come out and be like, I don't have time to explain, we've just got to do it, they're going to buy in. They're going to know, okay, Taresa doesn't do this unless she really needs us to. She is tuned in and she's proven to us that she doesn't just make decisions willy-nilly, or she isn't just being a cog in a wheel from leadership saying, do this or else, that she's got an invested interest in it. So doing that back work is really helpful. So
yeah, so just work on advocating for your staff and telling them that the work they are doing, they need to prove it through action and documentation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this video and this misconception. Thanks. Bye, dumpster friends.
Like and subscribe. Come back for more. Hit that button on the bell so you can keep on getting notifications so you don't miss any more helpful tips that are going to help you be successful as a nurse leader.